Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new show that we're trying out. This is something that we've been wanting to do for a while, and we thought, well, what's a universe that we could explore that has a lot of material in it? And so what we did is we went to our Facebook group and we asked out there, what do you guys want to hear more about? And this was one of the shows, one of the universes that you guys asked for more of. And that, of course, is the Stargate universe. So tonight we're going to start our FSF reviews, Stargate. And we're going to start with a movie. Now, this movie was released back in 1994. And so this movie's been around for a while. It's actually older than Kathleen, I think.
No, I was 2.
You were 2. I was only in high school, whatever. But yeah.
I was 2.
So Tim and Kathleen are the newbies to Stargate. They might have seen 1 or 2 episodes here and
I
there.
have seen nothing until I watched the movie.
So I've seen the movie. It's actually one of my favorite movies. I love the movie. I own it. I've watched it for years. You know, as soon as I had it on DVD, then I bought it on Blu-ray. Now I have it on digital copy. So it's been in the library, the Bicycle Homestead Library, for quite a while. But I still have not watched an episode of SG-1. I have watched a couple episodes of Atlantis, and yeah, that's about it.
I know enough about the universe to know that at some point we get Jason Momoa, and that's it.
She's hanging around for the Momoa.
Yep.
Hoping he's shirtless.
And I, however, have seen this series multiple times. Movie, SG-1, and Atlantis. So I'm kind of the Stargate expert in this area here.
Look at you getting a smart one.
I know, right?
Nick gets to be our Sherpa. He's a star Sherpa. Can we call him a gator? Is he a gator? Gator. Anyway.
I'd
rather be a Jaffa, but you don't know what that is yet.
I don't, and it sounds like you shouldn't want to be that either. I don't know, but it's probably something really cool, and we'll find out later. But yeah. So here's the premise of the show, guys. We're going to talk about this movie. We're not going to talk about it in such extensive breakdown that it's scene by scene or line by line, but there's going to be some things that we have to talk about to kind of set the premise of where we're at in the story, so that hopefully, for those of you who haven't seen the movie in a while, aren't lost as we're talking about this. So the movie starts off with a guy named Daniel Jackson. He's at, actually it starts off with the review.
Starts off before that.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said I came back to it. So actually it starts off in ancient Egypt, or what I call ancient Egypt, which is the 1920s. And there's this big exploration. They've got the sand dunes. What? You guys are both smiling. Did I get the date wrong?
Well, it didn't actually start there either. I mean, it started in ancient Egypt, which is like 8,000 BCE or something. Or no, BC.
Fine, Sherpa, you take the lead. You just whatever. All right, so yeah, so it goes from ancient Egypt to the exploration of the Egyptian ruins in about the 1920s, and there's the discovery of everything that's kind of going on. They find all this cool stuff that they have no idea what it is, and then we come to modern day, and Daniel Jackson is talking in the school. It looks like a school library to me, or a public library, or somewhere where there's an auditorium of some type where he's able to.
University of sorts.
Yeah, he's given it's like he's doing a lecture up there, and they're talking about Egyptian hieroglyphics, and he's got all these ideas and plans, and when he admits that he doesn't know who built the pyramids.
No. He doesn't care who built them. It was when they were built is what he cared about.
Right. But they asked him who built them. And he said, I don't know. It doesn't, I don't care. And then that's when everybody got up and left. And I kind of expected him to be like, I have candy. Please stay. I have candy. But it didn't. So, but yes, this is where he gets identified as somebody who can identify the symbols on the Stargate, gets brought into the military compound. And from there, the story kind of picks up pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. It accelerates pretty quickly as to how he figures things out with the newspaper, and before you know it, he's able to identify all 7 symbols on the Stargate.
I just gotta say, it sucks to be the actors in this one. And we talked to Eric Avari, who is like sand. Sand was everywhere in places I didn't even want sand.
And I mean, right. Even like when John and I were talking about it before we watched it, James Spader hates this movie. He hated that he did it.
Yeah.
He only did it for the paycheck. And I know that we were going to talk, you want to talk a little bit later about the critic reviews, but one of them that I found that made me laugh on the same kind of topic was that it was loud and convoluted. James Spader is the only reason to see it.
I mean, at that time, you know, the thing is, Eric Avari gives a wonderful performance, but he doesn't say a single word in this movie you can understand.
Right.
You know, it's you know, the great thing that I find out about this movie, and if for anybody watching it, if you put the closed captioning on, which is kind of fun for this movie, like when Ra talks, you'll find that it translates everything. When Eric Avari talks, it just says alien language.
Yeah.
Which
Which
you have
is
no
so
idea.
helpful.
Right. So it just means in the story, you know, in the script, he was even, you know, just like, make it sound like Egyptian and let it be gibberish and go for it. Because it doesn't sound, even they don't translate it, which I just kind of thought was funny. But we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here too.
That's what
all
we
right.
do
So
best.
we do that best.
I think this movie got ahead of itself as well, though.
Yeah.
In all reality.
So did anybody else find it interesting that when the Stargate opens and it kind of, because it kind of looks like water, right? Because you know, especially because it kind of flushes out the backside and then it kind of settles down and it's real. It's like a calm water. You know, it looks like almost looks like a pool. And all the soldiers just kind of, you know, they just with their guns, they just kind of trek through. And Daniel Jackson walks up and he's like,
I'm gonna poke it, right? And
he's like poking, he's like waving his hand through, and he's like, "Ooh, yeah." But that, to me, that was also the difference between a soldier's mentality and a scholar's mentality, right? I just kind of thought it was funny, and then they took off on the hyperspeed roller coaster.
I struggled with that a little bit too. With you're just gonna walk headfirst through this thing because you were told to. You're not gonna look at what it is anymore. You're not gonna investigate. But also, such the military attitude of we're going to go in guns blazing, even though we have no idea what we're stepping into. We're going to step into it as though we're the ones in charge. It's like, oh, why?
But at least we can breathe.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
We know that the atmosphere is the same.
It's sustainable. Go ahead and go through. We don't need masks. We'll be fine. Yeah. But that's the military mentality, right? I mean, especially put your head down, you do what you're told, and you just go get it done.
They didn't really have any procedures in place for this yet. So
no, let's just go.
This is all brand new.
And the fact that they brought up the fact that Dr. Jackson did in 14 days what they couldn't solve in 2 years. They've had 2 years that the military has been in there working on this as well. And their plan is, hey, the atmosphere is stable, go in guns blazing. Like that's
well, I think
2 years.
Well, see, I think they were planning that portion of it for 2 years, going in with guns blazing. The rest of it they couldn't figure out because the scholars, any movie like this where the military gets involved, it's like we don't know what's going. Like I think of Independence Day or War of the Worlds or anything else. We don't know what's going on, but we got bombs and guns. Let's go. You know, it's just kind of the way it's written. So I kind of think that's the same military presence here.
Yeah, and the whole flawed concept of the atmosphere matches, but the other side of the ring's not going to match, so you're going to have to translate over there too to be able to get back. But good luck.
Right, Godspeed. But Jackson
they didn't necessarily know that per se, but
but Jackson kind of fibbed on this side, on the Earth side. He told them that, oh yeah, I can absolutely solve it. Don't worry about it.
But the fact that they even said, hey, you're going to have to translate the other side of it. And he's like, oh yeah, I can totally do that. It's like,
right. But he also just solved it in 14 days, what they couldn't do in 2 years. So I think he was feeling his oats a little bit, just kind of like, yeah, I got this.
Which, I mean, I understand because at the beginning of the movie, he is literally living out of his briefcase. He's lost everything. He's
got nowhere else to go.
Complete laughing stock. So he's got nothing to lose. He's in it to win it. He's going to try to prove something to someone. And I think that someone honestly is himself, that he's just trying to say that he can do something because he needs to know that he can.
See, if this was like a D&D campaign of sorts, when they asked, oh, could you translate it on the other side? He rolls and sure, he gets he
got a nat 20 on his bluff. But
well, what he didn't know is the home address, like the point of origin. Like, okay, you probably could have been like, well, won't that place also need a point of origin? But he was probably just so excited about
Well, yeah, but on the Earth side, he only saw two. They only saw two of the images, the symbols.
Yeah.
And so when he got there, he was going to have to find the rest. And he knew that getting there. And he even explains that later that, well, I just figured they'd have them written down somewhere because they were written down somewhere here.
Right.
Yeah.
Which it's flawed logic and it's a very large plot hole, but all the same, it's there.
But that is also kind of the way that life works too, that is one of the biggest plot holes of life is oh yeah, I can totally do that because I've done it before. But now your situation has changed. So,
right.
Like
it's the fail. Go ahead, Nick.
You got to change your brakes on your car, but you're like, I thought I knew how to do this, but it's still going to take me 2 hours to do it.
Right. And this is 1994. He couldn't look up a YouTube tutorial on how to do it.
Right. Well, there wasn't very many alien invasions back then, so, he didn't know what to do.
No, they had already invaded and left.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. The aliens were done with us.
Right. They rolled their windows back up. They locked their doors. They moved on. So one of the things I did appreciate that when they got to the new Earth or, whatever we call it, Earth 2 or Egypt 2 or whatever they designed. I think later in the movie, O'Neill refers to it as Planet X is all they called it.
No, it's starts with an A, Abydos.
Sure, we'll go with that. Okay, I must have missed that somewhere.
I'm gonna look it up.
Okay, well, you look it up. I'm gonna keep talking. All right, so I did like when they get into the pyramid, they immediately start with their military procedures. They're fanning out. They're doing all these things. But one of the things that cracked me up, if you watch any military movie, they when they fan out, and this one takes this corner, this one takes this corner, and they're covering their ends for protection. They never expose themselves, except for the one guy runs out into the daylight and kneels behind this small pillar that's not even his whole body height when he's kneeling. I'm going to call this man Troy. My friends who I play video games will completely understand the reference because he's begging for a headshot. And so Troy here is crouching, and which is funny because he actually does end up dying later. Spoiler alert for the movie. But
I don't think a spoiler alert's really necessary on a 29-year-old movie, almost.
Yeah, but still, it was more of a spoiler alert for Troy if he's watching or listening. So, spoiler alert, Troy, your namesake dies.
I was amused by the use of flares. Like, why are you lighting off flares inside of a pyramid that you have no idea what's going on around you?
Because atmospherically, it was okay.
It was dark and they needed to see.
But they had flashlights too. Why are they lighting off flares?
I didn't understand that either. They've got these big megawatt flashlights, and my dudes are hitting off every flare that they carried in the box with them. They're passing them out like they're party favors. Just,
my notes,
they're like, here's a flare for you. Here's a flare for you.
My notes specifically say, I feel like a flare would have been safer. Or a flashlight would have been safer.
Right.
The other thing I thought was weird, I know we're kind of putting plot holes and we haven't discussed everything that happened, but when they first bring Jackson into the actual gate room and the control room, they already have a map of space.
Somehow they know where the planet is.
Right. And like this robot thing, like as it dialed the number, it was like, woo, and it moves over. And I'm like, how did they know it had something to do with space? But they didn't.
Because the plot line needed it. The story needed it to be there. Okay, and did either of you guys chuckle every time they yelled Kowalski and say "smile and wave, boys"? Because
yes,
I did. Kowalski, report. Because he kept saying Kowalski, report, and I'm like, smile and wave, boys.
Status report.
Now you know where Penguins got it.
We have a friend whose last name is Kowalski, and every time we talk to Evan, I'm like, status report. He doesn't think it's funny.
Because the Penguins of Madagascar, they literally were like, Kowalski, report. Like they constantly did that. Yeah.
That's what we were laughing about.
Exactly.
We're just laughing at it in reverse. Instead of the Penguins mocking Stargate, we're mocking the Stargate with penguins.
So it just made me laugh because every time they say the movie, I think I have it written down like 5 different times, smile and wave, boys. Because every time they would say Kowalski, report. Yeah, I wrote it down. So I did kind of find it interesting too that as now some of the characters in the now they go out exploring. They meet up with the people from the town because Daniel gets dragged by a creature,
whatever the
that
nasty
looks,
spitty thing was.
yeah, that looks like it came from the movie The Dark Crystal. Was completely dragged through the sands to this mining settlement, and I did not write down all the names of some of the supporting characters of the townspeople, mainly because I couldn't figure out how to spell them. Because this is
Right.
before I turned on closed captioning. So I gave them nicknames, and so one of them I named Unibrow.
Oh yes.
Also called him Frau Farbissina. And then
I think
we
that's
get to,
Skara.
could be, sure. Let's go with that. The other guy with the longer hair who ends up being Eric Avari's son, I called him Lighter Boy. We'll talk about that in a couple minutes. So
Or
yeah,
was that Skara?
could have been. The only person whose name out of this that I really remember was Kusuf, and because that's Eric Avare, and his daughter Shuare, who I just called her Showery, but like she's been in the shower for a long time, so she's Showery. Because that's how otherwise I couldn't figure out how to pronounce it. So we're staying close enough for that.
I mean, her skin did look great for being on a desert planet. I mean,
It's the constant exfoliation from the sandstorms.
You're probably not wrong. I did kind of find it interesting that Daniel got a wife throughout all of this. They had dinner. He got a wife. I love the fact that he's so aloof as to what was going on, that he's like, hey, I'm getting prepped and cleaned, and they're washing my feet. They're doing this, they're doing that. And then in comes a woman, she's got the headdress on and everything. And he's like, no, I'm fine. Thank you very much. Just leave a mint on the pillow.
The reason was because he had the Eye of Ra.
Yeah,
necklace.
she was a virgin sacrifice to the gods. Like,
no, I know that. But I think it's funny that Daniel Jackson, the Egyptologist, had no clue what was going on here.
Clue.
And he was just so aloof that he was just like, yeah, just leave a mint on the pillow, walk away. It'll be fine.
Right,
I'll see
and
you in the morning.
the interaction between Ashari and Eric Avari's character, when Daniel's like walking her back out of the tent, and it's you can tell that he's asking if she's like, well, what's wrong with you? Why did he say no to you? And It's like, oh my word.
Was she broken? Was she defective? Really?
Is she disgusting? What's wrong with her? Yeah.
Yeah, the look of worry on Avari's face, on Kusuf's face, was pretty strong. I also found it interesting. Now talking about I gave him the name Lighter Boy, but he comes in. He looks at Kurt Russell's character O'Neill sitting there smoking a cigarette, and O'Neill lets him play with the lighter, even lets him fire up a cigarette, and the kid coughs it out because he's never smoked before. Until he grabs O'Neill's gun. And this is a storyline that plays throughout the whole movie, because we first see O'Neill in his house with long hair, and he's battling some pretty dark depression because of the loss of his son's life, because obviously it was something gun related, because as soon as Lighter Boy touches the gun, he freaks out.
Well, and when they came to recruit him, they said that his son had killed himself,
right,
that it was an accidental gunshot or something of that nature. So I'm guessing it was that Colonel O'Neill is struggling with PTSD because he didn't secure his weapon.
Right.
And his son killed himself with his weapon.
Yeah. So anytime a kid gets near a gun, he kind of freaks. I thought it was funny that Lighter Boy goes out with all of his little buddies, and he's like, hey, look what I got. And he starts showing them the lighter, and this is the Zippo, and he flips it open, and he's showing them fire. And it was like, magic. I control fire. And it was just, all these guys, it just killed me because, I imagine, okay, so if I was that kid or one of those kids in the circle, I would have been just as amazed, because we talk about third world countries. These guys are like in a ninth world country.
Right.
There is zero technology. They don't read, they don't write. And here comes a thing that can make fire that they have to do by, hitting rocks together or something.
It was very similar to when Ben Stiller's character gives the cavemen in Night at the Museum a lighter.
Yeah.
It was the same sort of feel.
So, and I like it later. He's O'Neill's talking with Lighter Boy and trying to explain that he's looking for Jackson, and he's going through all the motions, long hair, glasses and and he's like, the quote killed me. He goes, "I'm on planet X looking for a dweeb." Do you know what a dweeb is? You probably don't know what a dweeb is. And I was just like, okay, that's kind of funny.
And it is Abydos was the name of the planet.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And I loved the
Abydos.
I mean, I know that the movie came out in 1994.
Anyway.
But the use of the word dweeb made me laugh so hard.
Right, because it's not a word that we hear anymore, right? I mean, it just kind of took me by surprise.
It's such a 90s word.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I wrote it down, because I was like, I was chuckling as I paused the movie, chuckling so I could write down, "I'm on planet X looking for a dweeb."
And I love too when they first met the civilization, the quote I wrote down from Colonel O'Neill was "You're the linguist, try to talk to them." It's like, Dr. Jackson is so out of his element. It's like, sure, he's the linguist of a written language that hasn't been spoken in 8,000 years.
These guys had hieroglyphics coming out of their mouth, and he was and he was just like,
he can read what they're saying, but that doesn't mean he understands what they're saying.
So we get to the point now where they start explaining, because Jackson and Showery went to this tunnel with all the symbols and everything, and she's showing him what happened to her people, and Jackson's reading all the symbols and everything. He starts explaining it about how Ra was dying, and he found that the human body was so easy to fix, and that why he took the boy's body and just started fixing it, and how he became the ruler. And so because of the rebellion on Earth, on this planet, he outlawed reading and writing to make sure that
they didn't outsmart him.
They couldn't get him again. But yeah, and then they go back to the pyramid. The crew goes back to the pyramid. O'Neill and Jackson and Kowalski, and
after the rest of the people who had been at the pyramid are all kidnapped.
Yeah, and they walk in, all their stuff's kind of laying on the floor.
When that ship landed, I think that was like really cool how they did that effects wise.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely, especially for its time.
Like, in the 90s, like, come on, like, this is great.
Which is very funny, because I'll bring this up now because this is something I was going to bring up later, but the Baltimore Sun, back in October 28th of 1994, and this is still online, Stephen Hunter, by the way. Stephen Hunter wrote that the small-minded Stargate goes nowhere fast. And he says that the special effects turn out to be not very special and not very effective. Dude, that's harsh for the time period it was in. And you look back now, that movie was actually ahead of itself in some ways, I think.
Yeah, I think they did pretty well. I mean, there was no fish line involved.
Right?
I mean, there might have been with the slimy alien thing, but...
Well, yeah, but you know what? I think their use of practical, because they mix practical and visual effects here, with the special effects. And practical effects always have the opportunity to be a little campy, be a little goofy, silly.
Right.
But I thought that for what they did with the practical effects, mentioning the slimy tongue creature from the Dark Crystal that showed up
I do feel like
Abydos.
They just stole him from the Muppet Studio.
Oh, absolutely. They're like, yeah, hey, by the way, while we're flying by, can we just steal this?
Can we just borrow this space
Let's add a little more hair and put a bridle on it. It'll be fine.
And
we'll domesticate it. It'll be fine.
Have it dripping
attached to a horse.
have it love chocolate bars.
That was one of my other notes I put in here, is that chocolate makes friends.
Exactly.
Because that's true.
All right, so here's another thing that I noticed. So when they're in the ship, there's the elevator comes down. I called it the ring elevator because it had 7 or 8 rings that just kind of boop, 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 boop. So to me it's kind of like the Star Trek transporter.
Mm-hmm.
Because the bodies materialize and they dematerialize and rematerialize in another spot. I
do feel like there is a plot point that we're missing that we haven't actually brought up yet.
Go for it.
A part of the reason that the spaceship is there, that they're upset, is that Colonel O'Neill, when they first landed and he had everybody else outside of the pyramid and he went back in by himself and he was putting together whatever he was putting together, that it turns out it's a freaking bomb, because that's the military for you. We're going to go to this planet that we know nothing about. We know nothing about their culture. We know nothing about if there's anything there, but we're going to blow it up.
Yeah. Can't say bomb on an airplane.
And Ra is
he was
angry.
not happy about that. So yeah. But yeah, actually that was my next note was that they're in the pyramid and the bomb is missing, and they get drug up to meet Ra through this cool elevator, and they meet Ra. He comes out mostly surrounded by mostly nude and mostly bald little boys,
which is
set off my weirdo alert.
Very Egyptian.
Children, very effective.
It was what?
A shield of children is very effective. Like no one's going to.
Well, yes, it is. No, I get that. Nobody's going to want to shoot the kids.
And also, if you look at Egyptian culture, it's not inaccurate.
No, but it's still weird.
And especially when you die to the ripe old age of 15.
Right.
Everybody's young, hairless, and creepy looking.
Oh, Jesus.
And when you're that inbred.
Well, yeah, you got me there.
Because you got to keep your bloodlines pure.
So, yeah.
Sorry, hot take.
All right, moving away from the bald naked boys, because I'm getting creeped out. All right, so one of the cool special effects here that I thought they did was a nice visual effect was the morphing of the helmets. You know, because how do these people see where their heads are down here, but the god head is way up here?
Electronics.
Well, yeah, I get that, but I'm just saying it was kind of cool to be able to see, because I didn't understand that when I remember first watching the movie. I'm like, man, that dude's got a really long neck, and then realizing, when they hit the button and then it kind of goes back and you see their face morph in and all that stuff. I was like, man, that's really cool. Again, Stephen Hunter from the Baltimore Sun. I hope you understand how wrong you got that. But I thought that was a really cool thing to be able to morph from the helmet to the face. And that coolness only lasted for a couple of minutes because Daniel gets killed by a guard.
Mm-hmm.
Shot with a blaster. How rude.
Rude.
Yeah. And then O'Neill gets dropped into a water jail with the rest of the boys, with Kowalski. Smile and wave, boys.
And French Stewart.
And French Stewart. He's definitely there. Yeah, he almost got to see Rod the first time, but till he got the bantha stick to the face. I know it's not the right universe, Nick. Don't even start with me.
None of this is the right universe.
And I could just see him warming up, because I'm like, he got us a bantha stick, and he's like, ah. He's like, that's not what it is.
What is it? Sort of, a little bit. Anyway.
So
the
yeah, go ahead.
Sarcophagus healing pod thing.
Oh, you mean the Lazarus pit?
Well, I was telling John, I'm
the
like,
Egyptian Bacta tank.
I'm like, it's a Bacta tank.
It's the Lazarus pit because it brings people back from the dead. This is totally the Lazarus pit from Batman.
That makes sense too.
Yeah.
Also, when Ra first comes out and behind the nearly naked young men are also the other Egyptian gods and the trays with the jars, and I'm like, oh man, they're gonna kill him and mummify them. Are they now? Oh, that would have been fun. They had the preparation jars there. I mean, you could totally have done it, but I don't know. So, there was a serious lack of cats in this movie, though.
There was one cat held by a naked boy when Daniel first wakes up, and he's coming out and he's ripping all his old skin off of his face.
One.
And I just want to ask a quick question, because Daniel's sitting here, and now before he was shot with the blaster stick, he could not speak the language. He could read it, but he couldn't speak it.
Right.
All of a sudden, he comes out and he's just sitting there, just chatting it up with Ra, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
That is because Ra knew where he was from.
Was that ever specifically said in the movie or something? Or did Daniel just have like a universal translator in his pocket? We just didn't realize it because something was...
Is there a Daniel fish in the Lazarus pit?
So Daniel knew ancient Egyptian.
Right.
He did not know whatever language these people were speaking. Ra knew at one point had control of the earth,
Right.
and he knew the ancient Egyptian
So you're saying
language,
that Ra changed his language.
so that Daniel would understand.
There's a flaw to that argument, though.
That
You want to know
how
what the
would
flaw? You want to know what your flaw is to that argument?
that
What
nobody
is
had
that?
spoken ancient Egyptian in over 1,000 years?
Not only just that. Okay, so I hadn't thought about that, but there's that. He could not speak with Showery before this. He gets the insto presto resurrecto, and all of a sudden he's able to not only talk to Ra, but all of a sudden he can talk with Showery as well.
That's true. It must be something in the not back to tank.
Yeah, something in there, whether he, like it's like, okay, so this is how I imagine it. It's like when in other movies where they do like the mind meld swap or something, and they're always like, I know where they're going with this. I've seen their plan, and
Right.
that's kind of how I see this one. Was like, I can't talk it. I got the instant presto resurrecto, and cha-cha, I can speak your language now.
Right. I'm like, there's no TARDIS in the corner translating.
Right.
I didn't see anybody stick a babel fish in his ear. How many other references can Kathleen throw in here? Because I can keep going.
Ah, it's great. And the best part about, okay, so there's a little bit more to go through with this, just real quick. So, Ra wants to send the bomb back across through the Stargate. He wants to send it with the mineral that they're mining because that makes the bomb, like, what? I think he said 100 times more explosive than what it normally
He
would
just
have been.
wants
It
to be done
amplifies
with
it.
humans in general, which
Right.
I get.
He wants to make sure the Stargate is exploded and nobody can ever mess with him again.
Which I get. I get being that done with humans.
I get it some days. I'm totally there. But then he calls a public execution. He wants Jackson to kill O'Neill, Kowalski, smile and wave, boys, and French Stewart and the other guys. But the villagers all come in and help them escape.
Yes, with all of the young children with firearms.
Right. Well,
Because we
O'Neill
need
wasn't
to
there
go back
stop
to
him.
O'Neill's character
Yeah.
arc itself too. But that is
Right.
Yeah.
And that comes up again around the fire. Bye, Nick. Oh, there he is.
That
But that comes up again around Nick, or that comes up around Nick. That comes up around the fire again with O'Neill, because all the boys are sitting there very proud of what they've done, and they've helped all these guys escape.
Right.
And Kowalski's like, because after O'Neill rips the weapons out of their hands and everything, Kowalski's like, hey, wait a minute. These kids just helped us out, and they've got nowhere else to go, so we might as well let them play. And yeah, he's not having any of that.
No, and I feel like Kurt Russell did a good job with that character arc, going from the PTSD of your son killing himself because of your perceived. I mean, they never really specify, but it had to have been that he didn't secure his weapon the way he was
Correct.
supposed to, and I understand being overly cautious after something like that happens.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
I've had nowhere near that amount of danger with my child, and it's still well, gosh, I'm not doing that again. I'm not going to let her have whatever. I mean, with Honora, she's allergic to blueberries, and it is I check ingredients on everything to make sure that there's not blueberries in it. I understand well, wait, did you put blueberries in your food? Just more so with don't give the children guns.
Sure.
But also, they just saved your butt. Could at least be appreciative of the fact that they put their own lives on the line, that they were willing to stand up to their god.
Going back to Jackson being able to understand.
Yes.
Jackson spoke first. And when he spoke first, he spoke a language like of Egyptian that he would know.
Okay.
Ra goes, oh, that's the language you're going to use. I'm going to use that language with you.
Okay. I have another flaw in your argument, but go ahead.
I don't understand the Shari part, but Shari.
Just go with showery. That's
Shari.
like showery, like shower with a Y on it. Showery. That's as close as I can get with a pronunciation.
But as a linguist, he's also like through the whole movie, he's like, oh, this word means this, or that
Right.
word means that. And like we don't know, like there could have been some time lapses.
Sure.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, like when they're in the tunnel and they're looking at the signs and he's starting to try to figure out how to pronounce the hieroglyphics and she's correcting him. Yes, that's obviously him learning. So I'm wondering if he was just altering the pronunciations of things to try to correct, but also
So yeah, and so
plot holy.
the whole Daniel speaking to Ra first thing, that actually makes a lot of sense, and how Ra would respond to him in a dialect that he would know, which would allow for conversation. The only flaw to that logic, again, is the whole interaction with Showery. And now when they go back to the encampment, and he realizes that, oh, you're my wife, because she's talking to him, telling him that it's okay, I protected your honor, didn't tell anybody that you found me unacceptable. And that's when the lights dim, the Marvin Gaye starts playing, and he found her all kinds of acceptable. It was romance time. So,
which, I mean, good for him. Like, you go from living out of your briefcase to
I got a wife.
You don't even have to work for this wife? What?
Yeah,
I mean,
just gotta have the right necklace. Just gotta have the right necklace, apparently. All right. So, yeah, go ahead, Nick.
I would like to point out he still has limited knowledge of the language. And he asked married, just a one-word question.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was able to, like, okay, kind of fill in. And then through body language and...
Oh, it was definitely body language.
Yeah.
Oh,
and like
body language. We can't talk about that body language on this show, but there was definitely some body language.
Like, I kind of agree, like, okay, how is he all of a sudden talking to her? But like, he did spend some time with her. He was starting to learn the language.
Yeah, he's definitely got the basics down.
Yeah. So, yeah.
There was he got down with the basics for sure. All right, so because now Jackson has kind of been speaking the language, he's been immersed in the culture, he's been able to figure out the seventh symbol, the point of origin, because he came out of the tent a lot smarter than he went into the tent.
You know, I understand that sometimes stress relief helps with clearer thinking.
It very well may.
Also,
Lighter Boy was drawing on the walls.
From John Carter, you know, sometimes you just have to take in the milk of the land.
There is that.
There's that.
All right, so they go back, they figure out how to attack the guards, they figure out how to go in, and O'Neill basically just starts taking out the guards one at a time. He's ripping through them, being the BA military band that we all think that Kurt Russell should be, because that's kind of what he does.
Mm-hmm.
But Showery gets killed by one of the new guards that shows up, because there was only a couple guards, and all of a sudden surprise guard shows up and shoots and kills her. He takes her back up.
All the people around him.
Right. So while the elevator's still there, Jackson picks up Showery, runs to the ring elevator, goes back up to the Lazarus pit.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple scenes later, we see, I thought it was kind of interesting that the guard that he was fighting, who was like the main personal guard, he looks at Ron and says, I will go handle this myself, or I'll go see to this myself. And he's going to go downstairs. I thought it was kind of interesting that if you're a Marvel fan, my dude turned into Sabretooth. He was like, shing.
Mm-hmm.
He had some claws come out, and he started ripping up O'Neill. The back of his shirt was all tattered and torn, and he had scratches all over his back. And
I do have to say, too, the decapitation with the elevator was kind of brilliant.
It was. It really was. And you know what was really cool? Going back to the whole special effects and practical effects and everything, the accuracy, I would imagine, because I've never seen a decapitated head.
Oh, no, that was straight up accurate.
From, where you see all, like, what I imagine what the the inside of the esophagus looks like,
Yeah.
and some the blood vessels and all these other things are just kind of all there. And I was like, oh, that was very detailed.
See, I noticed that too with there's the esophagus and there's the spinal cord. And
because I paused
I'm
it
not
for a
person.
second. I paused it for a second because I was like, man, they got really detailed on that. But that was cool how, O'Neill's like, well, I can't beat you, so I'm just going to kill you with your own tech. And boom, slaps his hand down and causes the elevator to come down.
Sometimes if you can't beat them, you have to
You elevator him.
You have to use their tech against them. It just makes sense.
I also thought it was okay. So what made me laugh is that the elevator's going up or coming back down rather, to decapitate the guard. And as it's coming down, the other line in the movie that O'Neill says that actually absolutely made me laugh out loud: "Give my regards to King Tut, butthole."
Yes.
And again, pause the movie. Tim's writing it down and laughing. But yeah. So Daniel had taken her up to the Lazarus pit. The head goes up, and somehow she returned.
Just the look on Ra's face with the decapitated, he was so disgusted, so annoyed.
Yeah, but the bomb won't shut off because, O'Neill had armed it because they didn't think that they could get off this planet. They didn't figure they could, do anything. So they're just going to light the bomb and destroy the Stargate on this side, and so that they can't go back to Earth or whatever.
And the fact that was the military's direction was for him to bomb the Stargate.
Right. But Ra, seeing that his people out in the field are losing, that they're getting tore up because Kusef has brought back in all the backups and they charge down the hill. And so Ra was like, peace out. I'm gone. I'm out of here.
And find another planet.
Right, exactly. So I thought it was kind of cool that they sent the bomb up because the elevator was still there. Oh no, they called the elevator back down, didn't they? Well, with the button. They called, because O'Neill and Jackson at the same time were like, I have an idea.
Yes.
Let's use the elevator. And so
45 seconds left on it or whatever, 44 seconds.
Yeah, not very much time at all was left.
And
sends it back up.
I did like too with the bomb the fact that obviously Ra had messed with it, because he was going to make it stronger, but then the fact that Colonel O'Neill couldn't get it shut off, and every time he tried to shut it off, it went faster.
Right.
I liked that detail. I thought that was a cool detail.
And again, going to the special effects of the movie, which again I'm going to call out Stephen Hunter, Baltimore Sun. Your article sucked. Anyway, I thought it was really cool in Ra's death scene, because the way that they show the alien, the boy face melting off, then the alien face, and then just down to like the structural, the skeletal system of him, and then just kind of like layer after layer getting melted away by the bomb. I just thought it was cool. So we're at the end of the movie. Everybody goes home except for
Dr. Jackson.
And why does he stay? Because he's a married man. He wants to stay with his wife.
And I mean, sure, he could have taken her back to Earth and taught her how to be human.
And how to live out of his suitcase.
But that's the thing, is he had nothing to go back to. There's no reason for him to go back when he can be on a planet. And like at the beginning when what's her name? Was it Catherine? The old lady?
Yeah, I think so.
When she first got Dr. Jackson in the car with her, and she's like, are these your parents? And it's like, those are his foster parents. It's like, he's got nothing. He doesn't even have biological family to go home to.
Yeah, he has absolutely nothing to return to. So why not sit there and hang out with your new wife and the new people, and So I thought that was kind of cool. So everyone else goes home. Happy ending for everybody. He's got new family, new friends, new culture to study.
I liked the change in Colonel O'Neill's personality as well. That no, you can't get rid of your PTSD. You can't get past the death of a child like that. Right. But the fact that he's no longer hopeless, he's no longer wallowing in what happened, that he's going back with we did something, this is what happened. He's got a new lease on life. He's got somebody to go back to. he's got his wife who's also struggling with what happened, that he needs to go and help. He needs to go and support. I liked his character arc a lot. And the way that Jackson and O'Neill's character arcs play off of each other as well, I thought was very well written. That Colonel O'Neill had everything. He had a job, he had a wife, he had a family, he had your suburban home, and had accidentally gotten rid of that. He had the traumatic event that happened, whereas Dr. Jackson had nothing. And the way that their stories are kind of
calls him out for it.
Yeah, the fact that he calls him out for it with the "you've got this to go home to."
Why are you in such a rush to die?
Yeah,
you have all of this to still live for. Yeah, absolutely. And I liked O'Neill's story. I liked O'Neill's story arc as well. In fact, in my notes, I said, "Lighter boy salutes. O'Neill finally smiles."
Yes.
Because that was just. It was almost like you said. You can't just like push your PTSD aside. You can't push your bad memories aside. But he allowed himself to enjoy the moment, and it was just a nice character arc from being a guy who was sad, mad all the time, very gruff and tough at the beginning of the movie. And it's not that I'm saying he wasn't like soft like satin at the end, but he was at least a lower grade of sandpaper at the end of the movie.
Going from the first scene of seeing him sitting on the bed in his son's room when the military asks if they can talk to him, and his wife is like, "You can try." Like that's a huge change from that character to the smile, the going back to his wife, going back to attempting to be a functional human being again, learning how to live his new reality, I guess.
Yeah.
It was big.
All right, so I have one thing that I'm disappointed about in this movie. Any guesses?
No.
Yes, but I don't know if you know what I know.
We're just going to go ahead and say no on that one, Nick.
Okay.
My only guess, and if I'm right on this, I'm going to laugh really hard, is that you are upset that there wasn't more time with the doctor who had originally tried to translate the hieroglyphics. Because that actor's hilarious.
I do love his actor, but yeah. But no, that's not it. But that would have been fun. Nick, go ahead. What's your guess?
You wanted more of it?
No, that wouldn't hurt my feelings either, but I was watching the extended version, so I did see probably a little bit more of it. But no, so that wasn't it either. Do you want to know what it is? And I guarantee neither one of you thought of this.
No idea.
Okay, I'm disappointed at the end of the movie that there wasn't one single Flash Gordon Ming the Merciless reference with Ra being killed and like a ring or something being on the ground and hearing the laughter trail off in the distance. That's what I was hoping for with Ra. That'd be like, like at the end of Flash Gordon, and it says the end with question marks. That's what I was kind of hoping for. I've always kind of thought that was a failed opportunity. And I know that they went off and started a TV series, which we're also going to review. But I've always thought that was it. And yeah.
So knowing what you guys know here, obviously part of the Stargate is going to be going through the Stargate, finding new places. Right. But what do you think is in store for characters, I guess?
Lots of stupidity. Lots of the military thinking it knows what it's supposed to do and biting itself in the butt. But that's just because that's what the military does.
Okay. See, here's my problem, and I don't know, and I don't want you to answer this for me because I want to find out in the series. My problem is that I don't know if the characters of Jackson and O'Neill continue on into the TV series with just different actors. Because clearly Kurt Russell and James Spader were not in the TV series. So my curiosities about characters are really centered on those two characters because those are the two character arcs that I paid the most attention to in the movie. Although I could see where Kowalski might get some more screen time later too, because he was, and I'm sorry, Kowalski, smile and wave voice. Anyway, but where he might get a little bit more screen time because of his involvement in the whole thing, and if they don't bring O'Neill and Jackson back, they could bring a version of Kowalski back and have him involved in things. So my first thought is that and I'm hoping to see a version of O'Neill, Jackson, and Kowalski in SG1, and that somehow, or for whatever reason, they now have the coordinates to go exactly. I was disappointed that I mentioned that a couple times so far, and nobody had said anything. But anyway,
trying not to.
Trying not to. I understand.
I was told I can't because I haven't seen it yet.
Well, that's true. But so my thought is that at some point they're going to come back to this planet, and I'm kind of hoping that that's how the series starts. Is that O'Neill and Kowalski and crew come back to do more exploration and kind of check in on Jackson, maybe deliver some nicely baked home goods and take off from there. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but I do hope that at some point that there is a reconnection with Jackson because he's off on a different planet, and kind of go from there.
I am guessing that it's probably he stayed behind, so why can't we go and continue invading other planets? Because America.
Actually, Canada, but at this point, but they're mocking America too. But anyway, all right. So, without saying which one of us is right, Nick, or either one of us even close to being on point.
Yes.
Okay, which one of us? No, I'm just kidding.
You said not to tell you which one?
That's why I said I was just kidding. I don't want to know. I want to find out. So
I think
go ahead.
Both of you had like 50%.
Okay.
That makes sense. So
what you're saying is we're not too far off then. All right.
Look at us go. So
But now I want to go watch the next episode.
I ended my notes with not the worst sci-fi I've seen. I would watch more.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is.
I've always thought this was a really cool movie, even if Rotten Tomatoes only gave it 2.5 stars and a 52% rating.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so back to the reviews we had talked about as well. So John told me that I needed to remember that this was Ancient Aliens, but it makes sense.
Well,
that was John's advice going into it. I was less than
52%, but okay.
I was less than 10 minutes into it before I said it was better than Dune.
You could have said that at the 30-second mark and you would have been accurate.
Well, yeah, I think it may have been that. Actually,
I have yet to see Sting running around in the sand dunes with his underwear and metal tighty whities,
Okay, so in my notes, already better than Dune is technically before Giza 1928. So it was pretty darn early in the story that I just decided it was right. Excuse me, better than Dune. So it had a $55 million budget and grossed $197 million worldwide, which is not terrible. Which
should classify the movie as a success, but
it should.
But it did not.
And then the Roger Ebert said in 2000 that the movie Ed Wood was about the worst director of all time, and it was made to prepare us for Stargate.
That's just rude. So interestingly enough, let's see, back in 2015, the Toronto.com, I believe it is, or TOR.com, maybe it's not Toronto, but TOR.com, some website rewatched this movie. And I have a problem with one of the comments in the movie. Right here, it says, ultimately, this is pretty much the same plot as half the B movies of the 1940s and 1950s with slightly better special effects. I'm sorry, nobody's face melted off in the 1940s like they did with Ra.
That's true. That's why they said slightly better special effects. But I mean, I do feel like it is a well-known sort of idea of the story. Oh, look, there's aliens. Oh, look, the military's going in where they have no idea and they have no place being, and they're going to go in head first and do something stupid.
And I think the guy that wrote this is just being way too critical because he's looking for something new and groundbreaking. There's not really anything new in sci-fi. There's just different ways of retelling the same story that have been told or being told for years and years. And even, okay, so he calls every actor, they're not people, they're all cliches. And from O'Neill's unconvincing new lease on life to Jackson's sudden bravery, to O'Neill's "Give my regards to King Tut," which is a painfully constructed catchphrase that just makes you want to vomit. I don't like this guy.
I would like to say that it did have uniqueness.
It does.
Like the helmets, those were fantastic.
Yeah,
the wardrobe and the cinematography in this movie, I think, is fantastic. The sets were very well done. I mean, I was never in ancient Egypt, but I imagine that's what it had to look like, based on what I've seen in other movies.
Right. My only real issue I have with the movie,
okay,
is that I know people who went to Egypt in 2012 because they thought that the pyramids were going to turn into spaceships.
Well, there's that.
Like, I actually know people who did that, and it's is this where that all started? Is this where you guys got that stupid idea?
Well, yeah, because Roz spaceship. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
No, because this was made in 94.
Yeah, but they may have watched it there.
Oh, those people. The people in 2000. Gotcha.
Yeah.
People in 2012 that legitimately believed that the pyramids were going to turn into spaceships and they were going to be taken home. And like,
well, don't you know that this is a historical document? I mean,
it is now. All right, guys. So let's do this. Let's finish this off with a rating. And what you thought of the movie. We'll go on a scale of 1 to 5, and what you thought of the movie, because I'd like to do this throughout the episodes as well. What we thought of the episodes. Was there anything that we learned about or that we think that we learn about us as a people, or anything from the episodes, or is there something that we can figure that all out later as we go along and through the series. But just to start off for the movie, what's your rating?
5 good?
1 bad, 5 good, and would you recommend it?
Okay.
So Kathleen, we'll go with you first, because since this is your very first watch.
I would give it. I'd go like a solid 3.5.
Okay, fair.
Not quite 4. It's almost a 4, but not quite. It definitely fits for the description of a B movie. Like, I get that. And if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for that cheese, that camp, then 100% this is a 5. This is where you should be looking if you're wanting a B level sci-fi movie. Like,
yeah,
if you want that the ancient Egyptian gods were actually aliens, then yeah, this is right where this is what you're looking for.
Right.
Yes, I would watch again. Yes, I am actually kind of looking forward to seeing where the series goes from the movie. Never thought that I would feel that way about it. Didn't have high expectations for it, which I think might also partially be why it's a 3.5, is I was ready to give this a 0. But then I watched it and I'm like, well, maybe it's not as bad as I thought.
There you go. Okay. And would you recommend it to somebody?
I would recommend it to somebody. I mean, but that is also very specific on the tell me what you're looking for. Like, I wouldn't be like, hey, I watched Stargate, you should watch it too. But if it's hey, I'm looking for something silly to watch, then yeah, it would probably go in my list of silly movies. And like I had said, my initial reaction at the end of the movie was that it was not the worst sci-fi movie I've ever seen.
Okay.
That's kind of high praise from me.
That is pretty good. All right. So cool. So 3.5 from Kathleen. I'm going to give it a very similar rating of 3.5 from me as well, but with a slightly different caveat than what Kathleen said. This is actually a movie I'll recommend to anybody. When they're like, "Oh, what sci-fi franchises or movies do you appreciate or do you enjoy?" I always talk about Star Wars. I often recommend Stargate because it's just, and I always just tell people, if you're going for the science, you're going to be disappointed. Stick around for the fun. It's a very entertaining movie. And I think as long as you look at it through that aspect, it's a very entertaining movie. But if you're looking for it to be scientifically accurate, or if you're looking for a movie without plot holes, because there are some plot holes in this movie that you can drive two semis through side by side. And only for that reason.
There's some you could fly a 747 through. Not you should fly 747s through things.
Yeah, that's a bad connotation there. But otherwise, I probably would have given it a 4. But this is a very strong movie. I don't think it's the best written movie out there. We're not talking about Gone with the Wind here, but it's a solidly written movie. It's very enjoyable. And if you're just looking for something that's fun and has some cool explosions and sound effects in it, put your surround sound on, turn the bass up, and have some fun. It's a good time.
And I think too that if you go into it with the main character of the movie, the actor hated this movie. He only did it because he needed the paycheck. I feel like that sets your bar for your expectations pretty well. He's
actually come around in the last couple of years and said it's not as bad as he thought it was, but he still says it's not the best thing he's ever done. He's not exactly embracing it, but he's not pushing it away like he used to. So
that's true.
All right, Nick, what's your rating?
So I've seen this many, many times. I would not quite put it at a 4 as well. Like I also think it's 3.5. Like I wouldn't, like if I have the opportunity to watch it, I'll watch it. But I'm not also going to go out of my way to watch it necessarily. But watching this also makes me want to get into the TV show even more. And knowing that you guys haven't seen the TV show, I just kind of want to watch you guys kind of watch it kind of thing, because this is where, because we get new directors, new writers, new
actors.
Yeah. And so, but the storylines are really good, and you'll find out later. It's just a really fun series. And this particular movie, you do need to watch it to kind of get your basis of, okay, this is Stargate, and now I want more.
Right. This is how it functions. This is how it functions. This is how it works. It makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool. So, Nick, what are we watching next? Because you are in control of how we watch what we watch, because we're going to be watching the universe in chronological order, I do believe. So,
are we going chronological by release date or chronological by story?
I thought we were going chronological by story.
Yes and no. Only because they do have an Origins, like Stargate Origins kind of thing, but that is useless, kind of.
Makes sense.
And that was one of the things you said we were going to watch later, right?
And honestly, that's one of the things I've not actually sat down and watched.
Okay.
Like there is some Stargate that I haven't actually seen. So,
are you feeling okay?
Me?
Yeah, you haven't watched something from Stargate.
So
I'm surprised.
Even in the Stargate universe, it's pretty well known that the movie SG-1 and Atlantis is where it's at.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
I've read that before.
Some of the other stuff. I did start watching Stargate Universe a couple months ago, and it just wasn't as Stargate. Stargate-y, yeah. Okay. And I do remember the cartoon from like as a kid, and it's kind of on a totally different timeline type of thing, so it's not necessarily relevant. So, but we are going to be watching,
I think episodes 1 and 2 of SG-1 next, aren't we?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, that will be the next thing that we review here on FSF Reviews Stargate. Until then, goodbye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Copyright 2023 FSF PopCast. Reference to any specific product or entity mentioned on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by FSF PopCast. The views expressed by the guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact us via email at info@fsfpopcast.com. Original music by Jordan Michaels.